Jesus Christ is a meme himself. I mean, memes simply are cultural, the equivalent of cultural genes. They're that which spreads through the culture by any means, whether it's by humans imitating other humans or radio jingles or that kind of thing. So I think you're using the word internet meme as, for a particular subset of memes, which are kind of rectangular spaces with some kind of words in. And that for some bizarre reason has come to be used as the only kind of meme. It's just one very little example of a special kind of meme. And some of them are quite funny.
And some of them are awful.
Yeah.
I hate bad arguments, and I hate bad arguments, especially when they come from people who are defending positions I hold, because I want the other side to have the bad arguments. And so when I see bad memes from atheist organizations, I look at this Bible contradiction, and it's not. Okay, we can do a little better. But right before we get to this question, I want to say to all the people who are back here who are staring at the back of our heads, you don't know this, but for about 10 or 15 minutes before we started, I stood below you and I can see up and I stared at the back of your heads just to make it fair. Yes.
Hi, my name is Reese. I work at Science World. You guys should come visit if you're in town for the next couple days. Earlier you were saying that, which is true, that the large majority of the world has some kind of concept of God or some kind of belief in God. Also, the large majority of the world is very poor, and often these two things go together. What is atheism's role in addressing the poverty of the world and the ignorance that comes with it? That's not really their fault.
I mean, it's a demonstrable fact that there is this correlation you talk about. The research of Gregory Paul shows this both across European countries and across states in America, that poverty, lack of social welfare, lack of social security, that kind of thing, tends to go with religiosity. And people tend to lose their religion when they have security, welfare, that sort of thing. And Scandinavian countries have the most advanced welfare systems in the world, and they're the least theistic. Atheism's role, I mean, I don't see atheism as a political movement. To me, it's a philosophical position. But obviously, as a citizen, politically, I'm in favor of reducing poverty, reducing inequality, and from that, this research seems to suggest atheism will flow.
Yeah, and I agree with Richard. I think that certainly atheist communities are more than just about atheism, because we're people. But it's my humanism that makes me want to fight and eliminate poverty. And I try, when I'm deciding what I'm going to do, there's the think globally, act locally idea. I also try to think about what would the entire world be like if everybody did the thing that I want to do, and try to work along those lines. And so if everybody donated a little bit more, if everybody worked to encourage politicians to instill policies that reduced poverty and suffering, but there's also the limit of what can any individual do. Well, one of the things that individuals can do is vote, run for office, support the sort of policies that are going to put an end to this. A collection of atheists on Reddit can raise a bunch of money and do good, as we've seen, but they're not going to end poverty. And while we as atheists and those of us who are humanists certainly have an incentive to go there, it may be that we need to set aside our differences in other areas and work with people towards specific goals. And so, like the Reverend Barry Lynn is the CEO or the president of Americans United for Church-State Separation, and I adore him. I've shared the stage with him before, and I will again. And I will share a stage with him for church-state separation, and then argue with him tooth and nail over whether or not a God exists if he wants to. And I do the same thing. When I decide what charity I might actually donate to, my first question is not, hang on, is there a religion behind this? My first question is, are they actually doing good with the money? How much of my money is going to go to those issues? What efforts can I contribute besides money to help them out? And then I will compare, hey, is there a secular version of this? Which is why I love Foundation Beyond Belief and organizations that are working to improve secular charities. I would encourage everybody, if you're not familiar with Foundation Beyond Belief, to investigate that. There's also SHARE, I believe, which is Secular Humanists Activists. I'm going to get the acronym wrong, but it's out there to do good and help people. And I'd like to see a lot more effort there. And there's always room. If you don't have the money to donate, which I was unemployed for 4 out of 10 years for a while there, you can donate your time. And you can show the world that instead of the view that they had of who atheists were, we actually are your neighbors, we are scientists, we are jackasses, we are the people who deliver your mail, and we actually care about other people. We care about what kind of world we live in, and that's the reason that we talk about religion, because we see religions, while certainly people do good in the name of their religion, there is a lot of harm, and it could be, as I was saying before, better without the baggage.
Thank you.
Hi. Thanks for coming to Vancouver. I just finished reading a book by one of the murdered editors of Charlie Hebdo, and he talks about the problems with the word Islamophobia. So I'm wondering, what are your opinions on using that term, Islamophobia?
I think we've dealt with that in the previous question, haven't we? I mean, Islamophobia is an absurd word. It's a made-up word to describe this privileged position that Islam has in our society, and I do not think it's a word that should have currency.
And the only thing I'd add is, I'm not overly concerned about the labels for things if they get in the way. I just released a video recently about the atheist label, the agnostic label, and things like that. At the end of the day, if Richard had called himself an atheist, and I said, oh, no, I don't want to call myself an atheist, but neither one of us believe in a God, and we're both working towards it, then if the label's in the way, then get rid of it. I don't think the label for atheist is necessarily in the way, but when there are attempts to label people as Islamophobes, merely to avoid having the discussion about what we should or shouldn't address and what are the limits, and is somebody going too far, and should we actually oppose certain things, if the label discussion is preventing that one, then that just needs to go away, because the other discussion is far more important.
I am phobic about beheading people, about whipping people, about apostasy being punished by death, women having their clitorises cut off. I'm phobic about all that. If you want to call that Islamophobia, do, but I prefer not to use the word.
Thank you both for coming. Mr. Dawkins, I've read most of your books, and I've been a big fan for several years, so it's good to see you here. My question is more about AI. I watched a TED Talk with Sam Harris, and I know you've been into computers for several years as well. Do you think we will ever achieve AI? And if so, would that AI ever become religious?
It's an interesting question. I'm not quite sure why it gets a laugh. AI meaning artificial intelligence?
Yes.
Why is that funny?
If I had to guess, I think they're anticipating an entertaining answer on whether or not AI would become religious.
Okay. I think it's a fascinating topic, scientifically, philosophically, actually. The question of consciousness is deeply, deeply mysterious, and it may well be solved by AI research eventually. So I think that's very interesting. Actually, I now understand why there was laughter. I misheard it. I thought, I didn't hear the word religious. I thought you said pernicious. Which maybe, yeah.
It's a toss-up as to which one is more dangerous.
Exactly, yes. Well, you could program it to become anything, I suppose. So you could program a religious robot if you wanted to. Some of you may have read Douglas Adams's Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, where there's a character in it called the Electric Monk, which is a robot device, a machine you buy to do your believing for you. In the same way as you buy video recorders to do your television watching for you, save you the trouble of watching it yourself. The Electric Monk does your believing for you, and the Mark II Electric Monk is capable of believing things they wouldn't believe in Salt Lake City. I suppose you could ask a sort of philosophically interesting question: would evolving artificial intelligence robots evolve towards religiosity in their own right without being programmed to do so? And I can't see how that would ever happen.
Although if they evolved to eventually believe that they had a creator, they'd actually be right.
Hello, Richard. I just want to first thank you for all the work you've done for evolutionary biology and public understanding of science. I first read your book when I was a young boy and growing up in Nashville, Tennessee, in an evangelical Christian family, and it really impacted my life for the better. So thank you so much. My question is, Richard, we know how difficult it could be for a gene to be eradicated from a gene pool, especially the gene is somewhat resistant to some of the antibacterial substance we're trying to use to eradicate. For example, like in the case of SARS, we often use quite aggressive measure to interrupt that. So in a meme of religion, when it often could be resistant to the supposed Q, that is logic, what kind of confidence could we have in eradicating those memes in a foreseeable future?
I only heard half that. What was it? What confidence eradicating?
What confidence could we have for eradicating memes of religion when those memes seem to be resistant to logic, often, that is?
It's very difficult, isn't it? Yes. It does seem that people who are indoctrinated in childhood, at a sensitive age in childhood, have can have an almost total resistance to logic. And I know of some examples of people highly educated in science, for example, who, because they've been indoctrinated as children into the belief that the world is young, they cannot accept, even when they see the evidence, even when they, at one level, understand the evidence. So there is extreme resistance, and I'm constantly impressed in a negative way by the tenacity of religious belief in the face of evidence and logic. It's one of the most pessimistic things, I think, about the human species, is that it is possible to indoctrinate children so thoroughly that they are immune to logic and reason. But I think it may only be a minority, and I think that what gives me more hope is that there are lots and lots of people who are perfectly open to reason and logic and science, but who just haven't been exposed to it. And therefore, if we try to expose them to it, try to give people the knowledge of science, that they will learn. I have a very encouraging story about a young man who came to Oxford. He was a young earth creationist. He came from, I think, somewhere in Washington State. And he believed the world was young and didn't believe in evolution. He attended my course of lectures at Oxford in evolution. And the end of the last lecture, he came down to the front and thumped the desk with his fist and said, "Gee, this evolution, it really makes sense." and it was clear that he just never met it before. I mean, he'd been to university, he'd majored in biology, but it was left out of the curriculum, as if it was possible to leave it out of the curriculum in biology.
There are some people who may in fact be immune. How do you tell the difference between somebody who is and somebody who isn't?
I generally ask the question of what would change your mind, and if they say nothing, the conversation is over.
I almost agree. I've had people say nothing. That's an expression of their confidence level currently. Doesn't mean it's an expression of their confidence level after an actual conversation. The fear that I have, that I'd like to disabuse people of, is you're never going to talk people out of those things. Yes, you can. I have thousands upon thousands of emails of people who've changed their mind because of what we've done on the TV show or in debates or from Richard's books or the blogs and things like that. And I know he gets emails on this as well. People change their mind. We have to be vigilant in presenting good information to combat bad information. And with some people, it's going to stick. And with some people, it's not, or it's not now. Now, there could be a theist that has listened to the show, my show, and still hasn't changed their mind, and yet a friend of theirs comes up and says the same thing I've said, perhaps in a slightly different way, where they have some connection to them, and then their mind is changed. Until I can tell the difference between the person who will never change their mind and the person who might change their mind, I'm going to keep talking, assuming that they're both in the category of the people who can change their mind. Because that's the only way that you're going to make progress. If you begin with this assumption that this is a waste of time, well, that's entirely your prerogative. There are people who say, oh, you're never going to change people's minds. Well, you're probably not thinking like that. But those of us who do this for a living are going to keep working on it and keep being optimistic, because I want, seriously, my goal is to change the world. I don't think it's going to happen during my lifetime. I don't think it's going to happen on my own. I have tons of people helping in this effort. I am blessed with a great many intelligent colleagues that are working towards the same goal. But having a goal that I can't possibly reach, or probably can't reach, is not disheartening to me in the slightest, because I see constant and increasing progress. And when I read Steven Pinker's great book on the better angels of our nature, talking about we are living in the best of times. When I get emails from people, when I meet people out in the lobby at events who are, hey, I was a fundamentalist Christian, I was a Scientologist, I was a Buddhist, whatever, and because of things that you've done, I've now changed my mind. That's all I ever needed. And I told the story briefly. After a debate, there was a 12-year-old girl who came up and said that, her parents had let her explore different religious views, and after this debate, she was an atheist. And I would debate for another 10 years without changing a single mind, just in the hope of getting one more 12-year-old girl. It's good enough for me.
There are, we get lots and lots of such things. It's very, very heartening, the number of people who come up when I'm signing books, for example, time after time after time. They say they've changed their minds. It's very, very encouraging. One more encouraging thing, let me tell you. There is no legal Arabic translation of the God delusion, but there is an illegal Arabic translation of the God delusion, which can be downloaded as a PDF. And it has been downloaded 10 million times. One third of that, 3 million or so, has been downloaded in Saudi Arabia.
Wow. And by the way, I wanted to mention that it's the 10th anniversary of the God delusion. It's also the 40th anniversary of the selfish gene, which was essentially your introduction to the world. And while I was 7 at the time, I read it as soon as I could. Yes?
Professor Dawkins, welcome to Vancouver. It's been, I think it took 21 years to see you in person. So anyway, I've been a fan of your books since 1995, and Selfish Gene was the start. My question is about the God module. As you know, there have been some research done on the fact that, well, if it's a fact, that believing in God and superstitions is hardwired. I'm talking about the research that Michael Persinger did at Laurentian University, and you yourself actually tried the God helmet as well. So if that's the case, if it's hardwired, then I don't think any education can convince the people who are hardwired to believe in superstitions and God and gods. Then I don't think education can do any enlightenment for them to see the reality. And it seems like believing superstitions and God is an evolutionary tool for them to survive the horrible life that we have in terms of survivalship, that they can rely on some sort of supreme source just to go through the hard time of whatever that is. And personally, I think that there is an offshoot in the evolution of human mind, and it's us, the atheists, who have the hardwire again to see the reality, to realize that there's no God, there's no creator as such. After, I would say, 20 years of the internet, information is free for everyone. I expected that by 2005 there would be no theist ever. All the information is out there. I can understand, I can see where we come from, 3.9 billion years of evolution on Earth. It's pretty easy to see. I see it, but it seems like 80 to 90% of people can't. If that's the case, that believing God is hardwired, why educate them about something that would be futile?
Yes, I think the phrase hardwired can be overdone and can be understood as being too rigid. I did submit to Michael Persinger's helmet. He's a Canadian researcher who puts a modified motorcycle helmet on your head and passes magnetic fields through your brain, and claims that in 80% of cases he can induce mystical or religious experiences. I was looking forward to this. I didn't expect to see God. I think I expected to sort of feel a strange oneness with the universe, that kind of thing. But I got nothing at all. This was done as an experiment by the BBC, and because it was television, there was only one control, and the control was a local vicar, and he also claimed to have no religious experience under the influence of the helmet. But Michael Persinger told me afterwards that whereas my EEG, my brainwave patterns, were exactly those of the 20% who don't get this experience, the vicar was a prime candidate. He was right in the middle of the 80% who do. But his brainwaves indicated that he was struggling not to submit to this, and he was doing something like reciting the multiplication tables or something to try to shut it out. I think you're seduced by the phrase hardwired, because you take it to mean irrevocable, and so it does when it's normally used. I don't think anybody would really want to suggest that there's neurological evidence that it's hardwired in that sense. We've already discussed the perhaps minority of people who cannot be changed, but then we had this in the answer to the previous question, this more encouraging evidence that a lot of people do actually change their minds. Many of the activists in the atheist movement are actually ex-vicars, ex-priests, ex-preachers, and ex-fundamentalists like Matt.
Yeah, which is why I reject the premise. And actually, I'd like to see him put his helmet on all the members of the Clergy Project to see. Now you've got people who were ostensibly very religious for a great deal of time and are not now. Obviously, we can't go back in time and put the helmet on them beforehand. But yeah, I don't think that. Like I said, I'll just go back to my previous answer. I can't tell the difference between somebody who may be irrevocably religious and those who are able to see reason. But we really got to move on to another question.
The Clergy Project, by the way, is another initiative of the Richard Dawkins Foundation. It's to take preachers, pastors, vicars, rabbis, imams who have lost their faith, and there are lots of them. There are more than 500 of them in the Clergy Project now, and give them a website, a refuge where they can go.
There are actually more than 666 because I know the person who got that number.
Even better. So these are clergy people who've lost their faith and who are, in many cases, struggling on and carrying on preaching in church every Sunday. And they can go to the Clergy Project website and cry on each other's shoulders and discuss their predicament. Because it is a predicament. I mean, they're stuck with this profession that they don't believe in. And it's very difficult for them to leave, not only for financial reasons, but because they lose respect of the community and things like that.
Sorry to interrupt. We have time for 3 more questions, Matt.
3 more questions. Number 1.
Thanks, gentlemen, for... Hello.
So
thanks
what was that
very much.
I did that at a debate and got in trouble for it.
I just wanted to say thanks to both you guys for sharing your time today. It's been 4 months on my skeptical journey, which has started at Hitchens and went to Dawkins and Dennett and Harris and eventually Dillahunty. So
you're moving downhill, is that?
No, you jumped
me.
there. You jumped there. So yeah, it's kind of a special night for me. And Richard, I don't know if you did this on purpose or not, but those socks just ironically remind me of Christmas. I just had to mention that.
Remind me of who?
Christmas.
Oh, Christmas, right.
But the question that I had was, in your experience, which God and subsequent argument have you encountered that you find the most challenging to refute?
I think literally none.
And I would say the deistic God, because it is so poorly defined, it is untestable, unfalsifiable, it is a nothing. And how do you, I mean, at least some of the other religions are trying to identify and label their God in a way where we can say, this contradicts, this is in conflict with nature and everything else. The deistic God, my thing is, why would anybody believe that? What possible justification could you have for believing, there's something, but I don't know what it is? I mean, aren't you at that point claiming to detect the undetectable, or at least be able to reason yourself to, I just can't believe that there's nothing, so there must be something. That it is as useless a concept to me as the word spirituality, which is tossed around. I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. This is spiritual. What the hell does that mean? And you talk about whether or not you put on the God helmet and you have a mystical spiritual experience. I don't even know if I would have one if I would use any of those words to describe it. Maybe I'll put the helmet on and I'll finally understand what spiritual means. But for now, it's gobbledygook. Yes.
Hi, good evening to both of you. My name is Madhvi. I'm here on behalf of what we call SAHA, South Asian Humanist Association. After 12 years of struggling to keep my thoughts to myself, I recently, a few years ago, have come out and started to voice my opinions, my views, and I've made, most of my friends they're there in my life, but they don't like me anymore. I've been fondly labeled atheist terrorist, and I've been told that I'm bombarding them with atheism, and it's too intense for them. So they like me, but they don't want it. If I don't talk about atheism, I'm included. But if I talk about atheism or humanism, I'm not. So, and my husband tells me, maybe you're overdoing it. If you want to keep any friends, maybe you don't want to do it as much. So I'm torn between my desire to talk about it, express my views, and keeping these friends that have been in my life for over 20 years. And what boggles my mind is 95% of them are all doctors and practicing professionals with 2-3 university degrees. And I'm not able to get to them. Like you answered, you said, where do I stop? Do I stop or do I keep talking? Not caring about whether or I'm accepted.
So do they talk to you about their religious views?
I'm born in a Hindu family. All my Hindu friends send me, we have like million festivals every year, and I get 300 or so from different WhatsApp groups and Facebook, different religious messages, and I post one related to atheism or humanism or a non-religious post. I'm an enemy.
Sorry, what was that?
I'm like so elated here looking at all these people. I'm like, I want to make friends with everybody.
Dude. Motley, this is everybody. Everybody, this is Motley. You guys can exchange numbers, friend each other on Facebook. So I'm a big, the standard joke is that I don't make outgoing calls on the show, and I don't go knocking door to door saying, hey, have you stopped believing in Jesus yet? I can help. I engage in conversations with the people who want to. Now, my Facebook page, my social media, of course I'm going to talk about this stuff. Anybody who is disinterested in that can piss off. But I don't want to minimize the impact of losing people who have been in your social structure for years. And this is something that we deal with all the time. I get email from people who've been ostracized from their families and have lost their friends. This is one of the reasons why there are a lot of atheist organizations creating good landing places. Sunday Assembly, Oasis. Now, they get labeled as like atheist church. They're not that, and church is a necessarily Protestant term, but now I'm being pedantic. What they are attempts for secular people to say, no, religion, you don't get to co-opt this aspect of humanity and claim it as yours. We are social creatures. We want to interact. And my friend and co-host Jen Peoples has said repeatedly, you're family if you act like family. And so on some occasions, as unfortunate as it is, you may need to build a new family and a new group. And that is what humanist organizations and Sunday Assembly and Oasis and they're trying to do. Let's build better ways for people to network so that you don't feel like you're alone. I get email all the time saying, I'm the only atheist in my town. No, you're not. You're not even, unless you're the only person in your town. And maybe not even then, if you have like multiple personalities. But I go back to V.S. Ramachandran's research on hemispherectomies. But I'm glad you're here, and please talk to the people around here. And I'm sure, is there anybody here who's a member of a secular organization in Vancouver who would like to help build networks with other people like her that would want to be here? Just interact.
I'm a member of Vancouver Atheist Republic. I think some of my friends are here.
Yes. Unfortunately, I never ended a relationship with somebody after I gave up my religion. They were always the ones to end it with me. And it hurt, and it hurt, and it hurt. And then I was like, hang on. I actually want people to like me for who I am. And if you being a part of my life is conditioned on me accepting what you believe, or not challenging what you believe, or not being allowed to speak about who I am and what I think, I don't need you in my life as much as I thought I did. And it hurts, but sometimes that's the case.
I said that.
I think it is one of the most pernicious aspects of religion that it has the power to divide families and divide people from their friends. And I regularly am greatly saddened by getting letters from people exactly like you say, who say, how can I do this? My parents disown me, or I'm making my parents miserable, and so on. I suppose there are other things that can do that, but religion has the almost unique power to sever people from the people they love, and it's one of the most wicked things about religion that it can do that.
And we have what I guess is the last question from this side. Thank you so much.
First of all, thank you very much for your time, both of you. And just a quick response to Matt. You said you're not sure whether you would ever manage to change the world. I would submit that both of you certainly have, and for the better, and thank you very much for it.
Thank you. That's a really good way of taking the pressure off having the last question. So good job.
My question is mostly to Richard. In my time at UBC and hearing from my friends at other universities around the world, I've noticed that the climate on campuses has gotten significantly more toxic and more difficult to navigate, to have a free and open discussion about many topics. And drawing on your experience as chair for the Public Understanding of Science, what are specific policies, notions, ideas, ways in which universities as institutions specifically can work to improve public discussion, airing of ideas, and a campus culture that is conducive to the public understanding of science and the general improvement of the illumination of mankind, to give it a lofty title?
Universities need to rediscover what universities are all about, which is a forum for discussion, civilized discussion of intellectual issues, and not to become, well, I mean, I think the most distressing examples of what's going wrong is the university where I first taught, University of California at Berkeley, the home of the free speech movement, which in recent times has been also the home of disinviting people because there's a fear that they might offend somebody. Well, you go to university in order to be exposed to things that might offend you. That's what you're there for. You're not there to be... So I think universities should revert to what universities are for, and to hell with safe spaces and Play-Doh and... Grow up, in other words. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.